was a big pop punk fan. Big. It was pretty much all I listened to besides punk rock and emo punk. When I was on my grade 8 graduation trip, other people were taking cute pictures or exploring the outdoor markets, while I was spending over $100 buying pop punk CDs. Needless to say, my Spotify has seen its fair share of All Time Low, Blink-182, and Sleeping with Sirens. Pop punk and the punk scene in general died down for a while once we reached the 2010s, but recently it's been having quite a big comeback. Travis Barker, the drummer of Blink-182, has been a crucial piece in this comeback, being on the tracks of artists like Machine Gun Kelly and WILLOW, and signing on young artists to his record label, for instance Jaden from TikTok. I'm not going to focus much on the chronological order of how pop punk came back to life, because that's not what I primarily want to talk about. What I do want to talk about is the supposedly diverse and inclusive environment that this new pop punk scene has. The OG pop punk bands from the early 2000s were really all Caucasian males. There were some female-fronted bands such as Evanescence and Paramore, but the genre was still by far dominated by males. And you definitely weren't seeing people of color in there. Now, however, the faces of the pop punk revival include people like WILLOW, who is a black woman, Olivia Rodrigo, who, although is not a pop punk artist, has been a game changer for the genre because of Good For You. And she is half Filipino. Grade 8 me would have never expected anyone of Asian heritage to be leading the pop punk genre. As a child, WILLOW watched her mother, Jada Pinkett Smith, endure racism and sexism while on tour with the latter's new metal band, Wicked Wisdom. Her main takeaway? Black women weren't allowed to do rock, much less metal. Not because they were incapable of performing the music or understanding the scene, but because its white guardians said so. The artist Dwayne has also spoke about how POC artists in alternative music have to be 20 times as good looking, 20 times as nice. You gotta walk the line. You can't be too feisty or too straight edged. You have to be perfect. And I feel that. I really do. If a white pop punk artist sings about getting high on drugs, it's called living the rock star life. But if a black artist sings about the same thing, it feeds into the criminalization of blacks. If a white pop punk artist drops out of school to pursue their music career, it's seen as passionate and dedicated. But if an East or South Asian does the same, people start to ask questions. I intuitively love this change that's going on because it means that pop punk can better achieve the purpose it aims to serve, which is to provide songs about angst that youth can relate to and as a result feel heard. The insecurities and struggles that youth go through can strongly depend on their cultural background. For example, a lot of pop punk songs are about young romantic relationships and the pain or longing that can come with it, such as Good For You. But even though Olivia Rodrigo is breaking the race barriers of pop punk with this song, it can't speak for everyone. There are many people who come from a cultural background where dating when they are young is just not allowed. So youth who come from those cultures just can't relate to any of these songs. There was this tweet by someone named Cameron, and I know it rings true for many people. Quote, I will delete this later, but I guess it's wild to see so many people talk about like teen breakups and heartbreaks involved because many of my black girlfriends and I did not have these experiences in high school. We were not asked out or invited to prom. Most of my friends are brown or dark-skinned. We are fat. We have lots of discussions on desirability and how distant we feel from a lot of experiences everyone seems to have had. And this is one of them. Because here's what Olivia Rodrigo, WILLOW, Lil Huddy, Machine Gun Kelly, and all these other new pop punk leaders have. Attractive appearances. And that's the new form of exclusion that the genre has adopted. Now some of you may be thinking, whoa, Olivia, so you're telling me that Willow's long goth eyeliner here and Lil Huddy's crazy quiffs with the choker is what conventional attractive standards are? Yes. Give me a chance to explain if it sounds odd. Conventional attractiveness and fashion has drastically changed from the 2000s to now in the 2020s. Despite Y2K and grunge fashion making a big comeback, it is widely different because of who adopts these aesthetics. During the 2000s punk era, it was cool to dress this way if you were in the pop punk circle. In contrast, today we see models, pop stars, the it girls, really anyone and everyone wearing trends of pop punk, including plaid, combat boots, thick black eyeliner, colorful hair, and ripped/torn pieces of clothing. The pop punk look is now sported by the cool people too. To understand what I'm talking about here, I want to make a distinction between being attractive in a conventional sense and being attractive in terms of a subculture. If you are conventionally attractive, it means that most people, regardless of what subcultures they belong to, will find you attractive. It's usually identifiable by looking at the way the most popular stars and mainstream celebrities looked. The main trends that the general public followed. Back in the 2000s, examples of conventionally attractive figures were people like Lindsay Lohan, Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie, and Britney Spears. Comparatively, being attractive in terms of a subculture is encapsulating the desirable features specific to that subculture. For instance, Avril Lavigne was who many grunge or pop punk girls wanted to look like. Her fishnets, neckties, copious amounts of chunky bracelets, and smudged thick black eyeliner were not conventionally attractive, but she was an attractive pop punk icon. Now, obviously, pop punk grunge fashion has made its changes since the early 2000s. I find that in present day, it tends to lean more into its feminine side. And I actually think this is because of pop punk becoming an increasingly mainstream culture. Naturally, when a subculture becomes more mainstream, people who are famous in the mainstream media will start to hop in on it. The subculture then starts to include people who are conventionally attractive, causing the bar for how one should look to slowly rise. You see people complimenting and praising the people with pretty faces and flat stomachs, and it's a feeling of, oh my god, these are people in my clique. If I want to identify with this group, then I better step up my game so that I can be accepted. Suddenly, pop punk is no longer a niche community for those who feel as though they have been left out or misunderstood by popular culture. It's become a popular genre for all, headed by both outsiders and the it people. I don't want to create any misunderstandings here. I'm not mad at all that pop punk is growing and being loved by more people. I think the emotional angst that pop punk delivers reflects how a lot of people have been feeling over this past year and a half. And so it makes sense why this genre would revive itself at this time. I'm more so pointing out that the way pop punk excludes is starting to shift. I know the word exclude has a very negative connotation surrounding it, but I mean exclude in a literal sense. Any group, any community, any subculture will inevitably exclude because that's what differentiates the group from others. And while the exclusionary aspects in the early 2000s were race and gender, the 2020s seem to be attractiveness. Pink Shift and Meet Me at the Altar are two bands that I've seen mentioned by multiple articles who talk about the new wave of pop punk. Yet when I check these two bands' Spotify, YouTube, and social media accounts, they have about the same attention as small pop punk bands did during the mid-2010s. They're not getting the sudden surge of popularity that people like Nessa Barrett, WILLOW, and Good For You has. There's this other TikTok I saw where a pop punk band called Action Adventure, composed entirely of people of color, sang, "Would you listen if we looked any different?" And each member held up a board with common hurtful sayings that they would hear as people of color in this genre. The TikTok had 1.3 million plays, over 300K likes, and lots of supportive comments saying, "Yes, of course I'll listen to you, of course I'll support you." Yet when I checked their Spotify and their YouTube, they're getting pretty small numbers. My guess as to why Pink Shift, Meet Me at the Altar, and Action Adventure are not soaring to stardom like WILLOW and Olivia Rodrigo? They don't fit the conventional attractive standards. They aren't the attractive pop punk artists. Another reason, of course, is the fact that WILLOW, like Jaden and Machine Gun Kelly, has some support from Travis Barker, which is a huge leg up because Travis Barker is like a veteran in this genre. And Olivia was already known for her role in High School Musical: The Musical, so she already had a name even before her own independent music career. But I believe that record label power is becoming less and less relevant in today's music age, with people being able to independently grow a following on TikTok or other social media platforms before starting to pursue their music career. But the truth is, I think that even if bands like Pink Shift, Meet Me at the Altar, and Action Adventure had the backing of Travis Barker or a really powerful record label, they still would be at a disadvantage to people like this. This brings me back to the quote from Dwayne that I had referred to earlier. POC artists in alternative music have to be 20 times as good looking, 20 times as nice. You gotta walk the line. You can't be too feisty or too straight-edged. You have to be perfect. And so yes, the pop punk wave is expanding in terms of race and gender, but now there is a higher scrutiny placed on appearance. You can't just be any POC. You have to be a good-looking POC. In this way, the barriers to pop punk are not disappearing, just evolving. Comment below your thoughts because I would really love to hear what you think. Let me know if you used to be a really big pop punk fan as well, like me. Thank you so much for watching. Let's keep talking, and I hope to hear from you soon. Bye!